Okay, so we've got a group of people joining us. Welcome. Again, I'll repeat myself. My name is Elena Mochinono, and I coach language teachers on how to build and grow their online teaching business the smart way. Most of us have experience working in teaching one-to-one. It's very labor intensive. What I am passionate about is helping teachers to teach smarter and to really enjoy not just the teaching part, but also all the marketing part. Okay, let's see where we're from. Okay, France, Brazil, from Brazil living in Switzerland, California living in Spain, Russia, Brazil, Ukraine living in Ohio, France and Canada, stuck in France. It's a good place to be stuck. And Germany, Ellen, well, okay, let's look. Kyrgyzstan, Russia. Okay. Well, thank you and welcome to you. Whether you're watching this live or the recording, I would like to take a moment and thank you for giving me an hour of your time. The time when time is so scarce, I know that it's not so easy to, especially for teachers, to carve out that time and give me your not just time but also attention. So I really appreciate that, and I am giving you my commitment that in the next hour you will not only have the enjoyable learning experience, but I also believe that some of the things that we will be discussing will be in a way transformative. At least this is the kind of energy I'm putting into the work that I do. So how to use visual storytelling on Instagram to empower, make change in people's lives, and grow your community exponentially. Now, as you're listening to this workshop, I would like for you to be mindful of the questions that just pop in your mind, because as somebody said, questions open up the space for answers to come in. And so it's really important for us as teachers, not only to give out answers, but to also follow our own questions. And actually, it was the questions that brought me to this very topic of visual storytelling, because when I was considering coming back on Instagram, initially I was there in 2016, you will learn more in the guide that I've prepared for you that accompanies this workshop. Whatever I will not be able to cover in an hour, I highly recommend that you read through the guide, because I put in several hours of work to make sure that I don't miss anything. But when I was coming back to Instagram, one of the things and questions that I had was, would I be able to build a community if I don't follow the traditional rules of Instagram, and particularly the rules that language teachers, I saw other language teachers using, and the ones that I was using before. And I wanted to do something completely different. And so the question paved the way to the answer, and that's why we're all here today. So the inspiration for this workshop comes from this quote: "If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea." And this is a beautiful quote by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And for those of you who have been following me, you know that I have used it a couple of times, quite a few, and particularly when I talk about social media and when I talk about teachers being leaders, not just teachers. And that is the hard part for us, coming from the format of teaching in a classroom. Because when we are going online, we need to sort of forget just the technical aspects of our job of teaching verb tenses and words. We need to think about how do we lead the people that we want to change, and how do we inspire this change. So, in other words, how do we stop drumming people on Instagram about here's how you join my program, or here's how what you need to do to become fluent. Just repeat this phrase so many times. I'm just, of course, exaggerating. None of us does that, but I'm sure you've seen portions of that here and there. But how do we teach people, our audience, to long for the endless immensity of the sea? Because when the change happens, when change happens in a mind, when the idea penetrates your mind, you cannot unthink it. And if it's the right time, if it's the right person, if the idea falls on the fertile soil, you don't really need to sell. You've already sold. Because that's the whole point, right? Why are we on Instagram or other places? Ultimately, as a business, we want our business to thrive, because the more it thrives, the more we can create more free content to help other people who may not be able to invest. So but the bottom line is everybody is like really concerned about, well, how do I, position myself, and how many times do I put my offer up there in front of the people? But the thing is, until we build a community, we cannot do that. And you cannot build a community by telling people how to collect wood and assign them tasks and work. The only way to build a community is for people to inspire the ownership of the ideas that you want to spread, to make them want this endless immensity of the sea. So in the next hour, we'll talk about the power of images, because Instagram is not just powerful because of images, it's actually double powerful because it's images and stories we tell. We're going to talk about a story that resonates and how we write it. And I can actually walk you through some of my process. And if you have questions at the end, I will take time for questions. And of course, the guide has a lot more examples. Taking and arranging pictures on your feed, getting the most of your bio, things to do for a thriving community. And I will talk about the Insta-Minded workshop that starts next week that I'm really excited about. And I hope that some of you will join that as well. So all of us know that images can speak. They create this longing and desire. Images build connections. Images bring about nostalgia. Images tell us something about the person. They transport it into a different place. They remind us of certain moments, and they help us express what words cannot express. And if you are thinking about, for example, how image is powerful, think about a hotel room versus a room of a home where people live. You walk into a hotel room, you see quite cliche, clean, pristine, but very predictable and sort of boring pieces of art on the wall. But when you go into a house, you will have the a completely different experience. When you go into a house, you will have the pictures of people that live in this house. All right, and that creates a completely different vibe. So let's look at these pictures, for example. And of course, I was a little bit creative just in throwing this. I just gave myself a little prompt and came up with two pictures. As you can see, this one is called A Day at Work. I created it for myself. And you see to the left is the actual picture that I took when I was in between, things that I was doing. I apologize for the background noise. My kids are home, as I'm sure everybody else's kids right now in the world, and that kind of helps us feel connected in a way. All right, and so to the left, there is a picture of my actual experience, my work, and to the right is the pretty picture that actually does not correspond to my reality, but it looks very polished and pristine. And I would like to find out from you which picture connects with you. We're not talking right now about the technical aspects of the picture. We're talking about the connection. Which picture tells a better story? Okay. So yeah, so this one and two, right? Their picture, because of the quote. Okay, yeah, yeah. I was thinking about the quote. However, the quote um, is probably, like, let's say the quote is not here, then probably it kind of has a different connotation. But um, this one picture tells you more about the person than the other. Yeah. So if the quote wasn't there, then of course. Okay, so let's look at the second one. My daily joys. Okay, so again, maybe it connects with everybody who likes coffee or tea. So the second picture is very professional. As you can see, the light is set up and you have really, clean and beautiful picture. I actually really like it. And the other one is just my picture. I'm sitting in a chair and I am taking a break, drinking tea and reading my book. And again, you can see the difference in the story that the picture tells, despite the fact that maybe, I mean, not maybe, obviously the first picture is not done by a professional. But it tells you a lot more about me. So if you were to look at the first two pictures, the one that I showed in the previous slide, right? And this one, you know a little bit about me. If you look just at the picture of this desk, maybe it's even my desk, but it's not, or the picture of this coffee, you know zero about me. When there is no knowledge about me, there's no connection. And when there's no connection, there's no community building. So as you can tell, professionalism in this case is secondhand, or comes secondhand. The first thing is, what do you know about me? Okay, you learn that in the first one, there's probably a little baby. The second one, I like tea and I take lemon in my tea. And there's, of course, a little scone and a book and a blankie and all that. It all creates a really cozy atmosphere. So with that, let's move on. What do you need to develop your visual story? First of all, you need a theme for your images. And generally, for most of the people that are starting or are doing this kind of work, the theme is you. It evolves around you. You are your brand, and the things that surround you are what is your theme. They're like the little things that tell me about. So in the two pictures that actually, well, one of them I didn't use it, or at the time, the first one, I was on Instagram yet, but the second one I did use in my feed. And it was actually this one. I added filters and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is a pretty common thing. It lets people know a little bit about me and it lets people into my world. But this is a theme. A theme is around me, the things that surround me every day. What do I do? How do I live my days? The tiny, small things that to your mind, for example, as a teacher, may not be, at first you don't look at them because you may not be paying attention. And then the second one is the ideas you want to spread, and we'll talk more about that as well. Now, to discover your story, you need to, before, I would say this. So usually when people want to know what to write about, or when they have a creative block, what do they do? Actually, let me ask you, what do you do when you would like to write something and you want to write something and you don't know what to write? Um, what do you do? You can try in the chat. Okay, let's see. All right, observe surroundings, brainstorming, talk to people, tune in how I feel right now, talk to people, random ideas, look at my notes, reading, search the internet. Very nice. Um, so look at my journal. Okay, very nice. So usually when teachers want to do something, to write something, they look at others, right? And they fill their minds with information. So whether you go on the internet, you read, you talk to other people, you look around. Typically, I see a lot of teachers look at other teachers' accounts, okay? So then you get overwhelmed, and that information really forces you to write something that is not you. And so the contrary to that is the strategy of looking at yourself, sitting down and thinking more about what it is that you are trying to do, what are you trying to achieve, and where you're going with your message. So that's the first thing. We'll talk a little more about that as we go. Then the second one is you need to overcome your self-imposed limits. And at first it will be kind of a challenge. And what I mean here is a lot of us have those limits. They're fears, they're our understanding of what vulnerability is, for example. And they will say, well, this is just my personal thing, and I can't share my personal struggles. All I can share is of verb tense forms or like the 5 best books ever. Those are really easy because it's easy to talk about these things and hide behind them, but they don't build a community. And there are certain things, of course, like you can go on and say, well, I can't share every single thing about my life, and you won't. But there are certain things that you need to do, and you do even as you're learning a language, that are kind of awkward and a little bit intimidating. And if you're not intimidated and challenged in a way, even as you're building your own visual storyboard, you will not be able to reach the people you want to reach. And finally, you learn to take and compose pictures and write. So these are the 3 components of the story. Okay. So how do you write a story that resonates? So I'm kind of going first with the story part and then the visual part. Well, first of all, is knowing your niche, your client, and understanding tension. And of course, these are like really deep things, and I have workshops on each of these. But really, niching down is about helping a certain group of people to do certain things for, a specific benefit because they need this benefit. Niching is not just about, oh, I'm teaching English to adults. This is way too broad, and it's kind of like saying, I'm going to marry somebody who is single. That that is just too wide. It has to be really specific. Who is your ideal client? And you have to be very specific and bold about what you want to communicate. So your niche, your client, and tension. So tension is this really difficult topic that people overlook, but tension is what brings people and moves people to action. And if tension is missing in your work or in your writing, if people don't feel like, man, I need to do something about it, this is really serious, then the visual storytelling does not pull people in, or the story itself does not pull people in. And the tension is not necessarily about like, oh, well, I need to use caps, or maybe I need to um, use cuss words or something like that. You really need to learn to build it by trying. Um, so the second one is think of a life of your ideal client and what prevents them from changing. There are certain things that your ideal client would like to do. And of course, like our thought is if only they took my class or if only they worked with me, they would, life would change for them. But that's not the case. Um, uh, Generally, particularly in the very beginning, people are hesitant to work with you, not because they don't like your program or anything, and then you only talk about your program on your social media. But there are lots of other psychological restraints that keep them away from changing. So, for example, your ideal client, you're teaching Italian to expats that grew up in the US or in the English-speaking country, and they learned Italian in group settings, and they learned it in their families, but of course it's not the kind of Italian they speak in Italy. And they understand that probably it would work for them. They need to work on something to improve their Italian, but they don't know where to start. But even before starting, there's a lot of questions like, am I good enough? Is it, they already feel a lot of guilt maybe that when they go and talk to their grandparents or their family in Italy, their Italian is not good enough. So there's a lot of shame and guilt and fear that is there. So just coming in and saying, hey, buy my lessons from me is not going to change anything. You need to come in and address that very fear or that very shame or that very um, obstacle that prevents them from changing. So in order for people to even join your program, there's a huge road that goes towards this. People don't buy just because they see a price tag or there's a 25% off discount. Nobody buys that. There's a story that starts way farther than this. So something that prevents people from changing. And don't think that saying that once will immediately change a person. Somewhere in marketing, people say it takes about 7 times for a person to hear the message to change. In our methods, if you study the methods of language learning, you have to repeat something 22 times in order for it to stick. So repetition is really important. When I write my post for anything or my blog post or newsletter, I start with the ending first. Where do I want my client to be? And in order to do that, of course, I know I have to know where they are first, like where are they now and where would I like them to be? So maybe if it's the Italian student or this Italian expat and they're looking for ways to reconnect with their language and heritage. So it's not just language for, because they love Italy. It's language because they feel like they have lost a little bit of themselves growing up in the US. And so you want to tell them that they are good enough, that even if they grew up in a second country of the country that they would like to be, they're still Italian. There's still a lot in them. There's this connection. So instead of like telling them, hey, here's what you don't know, the typical post that 10 mistakes that people make when they speak Italian. So that makes this person feel really good, right? Actually not. That makes them feel even worse. So we want to inspire them to change. So where we want to see them is for them to maybe shed a little bit of that shame that they carry, or maybe a little bit of this timidity that they carry, something that they feel like they're Italians, but they're not quite Italians. Well, maybe they are. Maybe they are in a different way, and maybe they're. You can affirm them by saying that when people grow up outside of their country and culture, they have a completely different look into the culture. Maybe you can come up with an example or metaphor that will resonate with them. And of course, write in a very simple way. That's and a short way. So I personally, when I think about writing for the web, in particular blog posts or posts on social media, I always think about constraints, and constraints help me. I know people say, well, but you can always add 5 slides after that and write your image or write it in images. But really, if you can't say this in one caption, it means you need to like break it down and really, or it means maybe you're wanting too much from the person. Okay, arranging pictures like a pro. Now, the pro here is probably very um, a very big word, not exactly like a pro, but this is not the point. And I see a lot of people doing that and getting into, I guess, the trap of, oh, I need to get everything professional. I need to bring in a professional. As you saw in my first example, professional pictures are wonderful. They're polished, pristine. They have beautiful lighting. They may show you the way you never saw yourself, especially if a photographer knows you. But professional photography is better placed on your website than on social media like Instagram, particularly as Instagram is gearing more towards authenticity. So when you take pictures, and you take pictures just with your phone, can they be good pictures? Of course they can. There are certain things you need to know. For example, for your Instagram, you need to use filters and always use the same one. So the same filter creates the same mood. There are different filters. When you upload a picture on Instagram, you can edit it right there on Instagram, but then there are also other apps that you can use to sort of clean up your picture before you even upload. There are different ways of doing that. But whether you are using an external app or the Instagram itself, remember that all of your pictures have to have the same filter. And I had an issue with that because I felt like, well, this is not really real if I'm putting the same filter. But filters really help contain the story in the same constraints. They create that kind of vibe, that feel, and they give a certain feeling and a certain mood to the picture. Second thing is including things, objects, places that reflect you and your surroundings. So, and I know everybody, people will tell me, well, but, I don't live in a pretty house, or I don't live in a beautiful country, or I'm a teacher of Italian, but I live in, I don't know, Turkey or something. But that doesn't matter because, again, it's not about the subject matter. It's about you and where you are. And the fact that you're struggling with this probably shows a little bit of insecurity in you, not necessarily, oh, this is how people will perceive you. Because one of the things that I did not want to do when I went back on Instagram is I did not want to create this kind of successful coach feed with quotes. And I mean, nothing against quotes, but in my mind, they kind of distracted people from what I wanted to say and what I wanted to show. And it was very hard for me to like show myself as a coach. Like, how do you do that? You go on social media and you see people like at the computer all the time, or they're drinking coffee all the time, which I do too, but or they're like holding these beautiful folders, or they sit in this pretty office, which is not the case with me. So I had to kind of invent myself and think about like, how do I want to share my story in a way that is authentic to me? And so I chose to share it through the things that surround me. Be mindful of composition. You focus on one object. Always use natural lighting, because if you use natural lighting, pictures that come out using smart photography, smartphone, iPhone, whatever, are really good. And remember white space. Now, white space is not necessarily white, but it's the space in your picture, usually 2/3 of your picture, that is not busy, okay? Now, having too many pictures running together with white space is not good. Here, we're talking about arranging pictures because there is also a feed, you know, and so pictures have to kind of go with each other. And we'll do more of that practice in the workshop, which I'll talk to you about that. And that's what I say, don't put two similar pictures next to each other. Alternate light and dark. Sometimes it helps people. Definitely helped me to alternate light and dark. I also sometimes alternate objects. So for example, if I have a picture where the focus is on one object and it's close up, then the next picture will be an object will be far away and there will be more wide space. And then the third picture will be a little different. So you need to also look at the actual, you know, the theme of the picture. Add a personal touch, a variation of a selfie. Now, selfies, and I know there's a lot of talk about selfies and how can we do selfies and this and that and all that. So selfies is not necessarily your face. It doesn't have to be your face. It can be like half of your face. It can be your cup and your hand. It can be, you know, the picture from the top as you're sitting down. So all I can see is maybe your feet or your legs. So they're different and they're all selfies because you take them yourself. Another thing is using frames. When when you create a picture and the picture that tells a story is using frames is really pleasing to an eye. And what I mean by that is, for example, a window frame. You're looking through the dark, from the dark room outside into the light, and the focus is outside. I'm sure you've seen many of those pictures through the window. They tell a lot of stories. They almost make you want to jump into that picture. So, and by frames, I mean not necessarily the window or the door frame, but something that is parallel, because whatever is parallel, whatever is like this beautiful straight lines, they are pleasing to the eye. So these are a couple of picture suggestions for you. Now we're moving into the hashtag idea. So what is wrong with these hashtags? Okay, now I actually used somebody's hashtags for as an example. But what I usually see is people either do not use hashtags at all or create like their own hashtags, or they use hashtags like these. So first of all, what's the problem with what are hashtags? Hashtags on Instagram are a way for people to find you. And the way people find you is they're interested in something. For example, let's say they're interested in, you know, photography, you know, like lifestyle photography, and they will use that hashtag to look for it. Maybe they're interested in a certain book, and they will use the hashtag to look for it. Maybe they're interested in the author, etc. So if it so happens that, for example, you write about something and you include that hashtag, you are helping that person find you. And that hashtag helps you connect. For example, if I read a book that I really enjoy, I go and look for hashtags and I kind of look through them because they tell me a lot about the person and the people. And if later, then I follow it if I'm curious, and then later, you know, Instagram randomly puts a post with that hashtag and somebody writes a review and then I engage with this person. Well, imagine you were that person, and that's how I would find you. Now, obviously, that means that you need to use very specific hashtags. These hashtags, the big issue with these hashtags is that they are absolutely from every single possible direction. And there's no direction. So you have Learn English students, English for kids, for adults, for teenagers, all the time, every day, cheap, Skype, class, always. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And then the last one, English with, let's say, Sabina Green. I don't know if it exists, but I just use it as an example because a lot of times I see, like, if people use hashtags, they use this whole hodgepodge over here. That is not helpful. Okay. If you want to find a person that resonates with you, you want to use something that will really be appealing to them. So, for example, let's say if I write about, or if I take a picture overlooking the pond in my park, and I think about something and I do use reflection, or maybe I take a picture of my kid looking into the reflection of the water, then I will use the picture, the hashtag mindfulness or mindful thoughts, which means people that are mindful, they might see it using the hashtag, or they might be interested when they see the hashtag, which means we will connect with them on a way deeper level than just learn English. And really, learn English, I find very few people that actually are learning English might be using that hashtag the way teachers use it. But that's a different story. So a practical example that I wanted to see, say you are a teacher of Italian and you want to teach using movies. So let's say you go on Instagram. Here's Instagram. There's the search button, and you put in Italian movies hashtag. So that's what I did. You know, like Italian movies hashtag. Of course, there's a ton of different pictures, and I look at them, and I scroll down and see. First of all, this is a really good exercise. It kind of shows to you which pictures, the style of pictures. Look at the style of pictures, mainly, older generation kind of pictures. Most of the pictures look kind of oldish, so maybe the types of filters that you use, they have to be a little maybe old looking, maybe saturated more. And then I like this one, okay? So I'm just going to click on this and see it has 35 likes. So not so many, but you can look at it. Okay. So I don't know anything about this person. Maybe I can just go and check this out. But what is really gold here are other hashtags. So then I can see, okay, there's Italian movies, the one that, and then there's Cinema Italiano. Oh, great. And or Story Italiane. So these are two interesting hashtags that might be helpful to me if I write about a particular thing that I write about, because I use that. And if you use specific hashtags, not all of them at the same time, but kind of vary from one to another. And by the way, you can use up to 30 of them, and you should use as many as you can, because that's how people find you. So some of the things here is, like, you can use these hashtags to be found, and this is a really powerful tool. And I know that some people will say, like, oh, well, I use hashtags to say, lessons with, Sabina Green. But really, who goes on Instagram and puts in, let me look for lessons with Sabrina Green? Who is she anyway? People don't know you. Only after people get on your page and follow you, like here, who is this person? I'm not going to click on this, but you can later. You can do this exercise. And then you can look at others as well. Like, okay, here's some other one. Okay, interesting. So here's an account that you may or may not follow, however you want to, but really cool stuff. Then you see lots of hashtags, and they give you some ideas on which ones may or may not. There's one, Netflix Ita, which is Italian Netflix. So you might look through that and use some of those. Again, if this is your niche, you want to build your database of hashtags and use hashtags and vary them, and you will see in your workbook, which is, by the way, that will come with the recording, you will click here how to use hashtags, and because it's a clickable thing, it will take you immediately and see there's 3 pages on how to use hashtags. So okay, let's move on. So hashtags really are really helpful tools for people to find you. And if you're not using them, or if you're only using the ones for you, it means you're not letting other people outside of the people that already know you or may recommend you to others to find you. And but then, of course, if all of your posts are about, let's say, learning the language, then it's really difficult to think outside the box. Okay, now we're getting to the bio. Your bio is really, really important. And here's something that should have been told, somebody should have told me some time ago, that your bio is not a place to be creative. Your bio is a place to be clear and very specific. Okay, there's no creativity in bio. There's no room for creativity. It's only 150 words. You have to practice your clarity and being concise. So what's wrong with these bios? John Johnson, teacher, coach, love English, Delta certified, live in Prague. Do you want a free lesson? Sign up. By the way, your bio has 3 parts in a way. You know, the first part is the first line, the second line, the third one is you invite people, the call to action, and then you have a little link. Where do you want people to go? So hence here, we know, what do we know about Johnson? He's teacher and coach. He loves English. Okay, this kind of useless. Then Delta certified. I have no idea what Delta is. And by the way, everybody who has Delta certificates, I have nothing against certificates. By the way, you know, if you want them, great, but please don't put them. That it's like 5 letters that, or 5 characters that take away space from your bio. Really, your clients, if you're writing for your clients, not your colleagues, if you're writing for your colleagues and we're having an issue, who are you targeting? If you're targeting your colleagues, then there's like, I don't understand. Most of your clients have no idea and don't care a hoot about your certifications. They do not know this ABC alphabetic soup. So try to stay away from it, because this is a riddle. Nobody knows that. Live in Prague. It may or may not be helpful. And yeah, there's a comment. Only one of my students asked me about CELTA for my 15-year of experience. Exactly. And then you're putting it on your bio. Like, really, there's no reason to do it. And then, do you want a free lesson? Now, okay, if you're giving free lessons, what is there in a free lesson for me? So this kind of bio will get John Johnson in a predicament where he will get people that will sign up for free lesson and either not show up, or after they show up, they never pay, or they complain how cheap or expensive, rather, his lessons are. So this is John Johnson's story. Now, Jane Jackson, I'm a teacher enthusiast helping enthusiastic teachers traverse with enthusiasm. What exactly does this tell me about this person's work? Okay, now I know that the person's probably really creative and they put in a lot of work trying to see how they can put the most creative bio, but really it says absolutely nothing to me about what this person does, other than this person is enthusiastic. Okay, so it's enough to just say I'm enthusiastic, right? You don't need to go into this whole creative thing. And I am saying this with a grain of salt, because, you know, you ask me, I would write my copy with so much creativity. And it wasn't until I started working with a copywriter who pulled out her whip and said, when you write copy, nobody cares about your creativity. If you want to be creative, write books, which this is what I do. But when you write copy, people only have 2 seconds to decide, do they want to follow your account or do they not want to follow your account? If you put them on this this rabbit chase of what does this mean? That doesn't make sense. Okay, so your bio has to be really unsexy and boring. First of all, you help, teach, coach, train, whatever. Who, and it has to be an adjective and noun, like who exactly is this, motivated businessmen or like businesswomen or, you know, teacher freelancers or um, I don't know, Italian expats living in the US, something like that. To do what? What do you help them do? So they can what? What is it that they want and why should they care? And now try putting this into a tiny little space and I will see how difficult it is. And it is really difficult to communicate your entire mission in one tiny sentence. And that's why niching is so vital, because if you're not clear, then you can't really put it into one sentence. Something about you, this is optional, and then sign up. So link that tells people how they can get to know you more or how they can learn more about you. Okay, so if for example you're training, say, and it has to make sense, so if you're helping Italian expats feel at ease with their speaking in written Italian, one or the other, or maybe two, I don't know, then your sign up button has to be sign up to receive a guide on how to, find your way around whatever. So this is way around Italy, right? You don't want to tell them, here's my guide on 10 mistakes that people make. Like and don't don't be teachery, really. That's, I think, another lesson from a visual storytelling. The more teachery we are, the less empathetic we are, the more difficult it's going to be to build our entire community. I remember years ago, it's just a really personal story, but years ago I had a teacher in the 4th grade, and she was very, teachers in the Soviet schools, because I grew up in the Soviet Union until it fell apart in 5th grade. But anyway, so the teachers were very prim, they were very distant, very cold, very professional, very whatever. A lot of Instagram accounts kind of remind me of that. But they were really cold and distant. And so one time this teacher brings to school her son. I think her son was sick or something, and she couldn't leave him at home. So she brings him to school in our class. And I was absolutely overwhelmed by the fact that my teacher, this woman that always wears suits and is always so uptight and always so professional, she's actually a mother and she has a son and she cooks dinners, and in my mind I was so mystified by this other person that is also, because she would talk to us as like teacher, and then she would go and talk to him as a son, and she would be two different people. And so sometimes when I'm on Instagram and I see this teacher, what I really want to see is the person behind it. Does this person really get how I feel when I'm an expat, growing up Italian, speaking Italian? Now my Italian is broken, I want to fix it, and who's going to help me? Does this person really get it? And if you can tell people that you know how they feel, if you can show that in the pictures, what surrounds you, what reminds you, your thoughts, and if your thoughts resonate with your ideal client, which they should, because if you're writing for someone that you don't care about, you shouldn't write for that person. That's the whole idea of pick a niche that is most profitable, and that's where it fails, because you can't pick a niche that you don't care about and then be successful in marketing it. You need to pick a niche that really resonates with who you are, because then you're able to build empathy, and then you're able to build a community. So growing your community, a lot of times people say, okay, it's all about posting. But no, I think maybe 50% is about posting. 50% is about showing up, not to just to post, but to engage, respond to comments, stories, participate. You're being a part of the community. Now, by that, I don't mean that you have to start compulsively, right? Liking every single person's post. This is actually a very bad practice that can quickly be cut off by Instagram. Engage with 2 or 3 people, maybe 5 people, but really engage with them. Really engage with people that are in your community. Find, using hashtags, people that are, let's say, Italian expats, and connect with them. And the reason why I'm using Italian expats because I have a lot of Italian teachers in my community, Smart Teachers Library. That's why I have all these examples. So respond to comment stories, engage with others, leave meaningful comments. So on the days that you don't post, go and leave meaningful comments, but not just like good job or kind of like, try something else. Maybe at first it's going to be really intimidating. Maybe you'll just put a tiny little heart there. It really makes a lot. And by heart, I mean in a comment, not liking, because liking really does not show community. A community is in the engagement. That's, the metrics that really matters is the comments, the engagement, the comments and responses to your stories. It doesn't matter how many people save my posts, because whoever saves my posts in the long run, like it doesn't matter. They might be saving 15 other posts and then they won't find them. What matters to me is that people read and engage, because once they read, and if you put the right idea, the longing of the sea in there, then they're never going to be the same. So when you leave meaningful comments, maybe 2 or 3, every week, but you are showing up to do it, then it's going to really bring you the right people to your account. Promote others. That is absolutely, sharing in stories. And people say, well, it's just kind of really tedious when I look through stories and the person just keeps droning on about their program, and then, oh, here's my super wonderful program, and this is how much it costs, and there's 25% off, and let me tell you more about my program. Oh, and by the way, I'll tell you more. Like, really, people, just tell me more about you. I want to know about you. Do you drink coffee? Do you drink tea? Where do like, where are you? Do you like going outside? Do you have kids? Etc. What do we have in common? Discover something new and follow people who really inspire you. Follow hashtags, engage with people. So community really is less so about posting, but more so about engaging. And this is core, because after people get so like excited about building their posts, they just stay there. They don't go out and maybe engage with one person and try to see where it takes them. But it's really vital, very, very important. And when you promote others, it's what happens is people trust you more, because then they see that, oh, this person values me more, other than the rather than the money that they potentially can make. So this is the idea about, growing your community. And of course, all this is just information.